Welcome back. Okay, today we are going to go ahead and finish our Enterprise D model here, Enterprise Original Series Enterprise model here, and go ahead and get the pins done on it. Enterprise D must have that thing on the brain for some reason. We're going to go ahead and pin and tab it so that we can reassemble the model. Because if we go to print these parts right now, you know that the saucer and the neck just has a clean, flat face that is kind of would be a pain in the butt to glue back. You wouldn't be able to get it glued in quite perfectly. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go ahead and pin these model parts so that we can reassemble it very easily. First thing we'll do is let's go ahead and close the eyeball for everything that we don't need to be looking at right now. And we're going to create a tab for the saucer and the second and the interconnecting dorsal here. And we'll do that by coming over here to Meshmix. You see this tool along here, the lovely little face tool. We're going to open that, we're going to click on that, and we're going to select a cube. Now, when I pin the model, I usually select these cylinders. In this case, we're going to select a cube, and we can do a couple different ways of doing that. Oops. I just hit Z to back out of that because I really needed to be on this face. I wanted to be able to see my face before I selected the cube. Because I want to put it straight onto this face right here. So Mesh Mix, grab my cube, and I didn't just click on it, I'm holding the button. I'm holding the left-hand button as I drag this over to this face. Boom. Now you can see the cube is huge in relationship to the model, and you can see where it says drop solid. Here's the dimensions for it, the offset, etc. Obviously this is way too big, so let's take that down to a 3mm cube and see where that leaves us. Okay, see, that's a lot more manageable. Now when you drop drop the solid onto a model that you're working on, it automatically drops it close to about halfway, which is good. That's where you want it to be. You see how it's half in the model and half out the model. And you can also move it around a little bit right here. And you'll see, like if I come over and do that, you see how it tries to keep it on an even keel. If I move it to the side, it'll move it along there. This is a nice flat area, so it's going to keep it on that. It's going to keep it as flat as possible. But we are going to have to move it a little bit, as you can see, because it's not perfectly aligned, which is fine. So we'll come over here, we'll do like that, we'll hit accept. And now the part has been added into our object browser as dropped part 1. So let's go ahead and select drop part 1, and we can hit T for transform. And now we can align it in relation to the rest of the model. We're just going to make it square like that. Now, do you remember these little tools here and here, these stretching tools? Now's the time when we're going to be using that, because that's 3mm seems like a pretty good size for the width to pin it, but we want this much longer. So we can either do this by grabbing and stretching, but pay attention over here to the transform as I'm doing that. See, the x-axis is increasing, but it's not increasing very much. It's very slow. So you can also uncheck uniform scaling and go to your x-axis, and let's just type in 10mm and then tab out. Okay, see, now we have a bar that's 10mm long, 3mm wide, and 3mm tall, and that's pretty good that's getting close to what we would like as a tab for this piece. But I feel like we probably want it to tab in a little bit farther to give us some good support. So we're going to keep it off of uniform scaling. Let's increase that to 12mm. And you can already see that it's not quite centered, and it doesn't really have to be, but I like to try and keep things as even as possible. So let's try and put it a little bit closer towards the center there. And I would like this to actually be deeper into the secondary hull. So I'm going to grab this one and stretch that out. But again, it's not really moving it very fast. So you can come up to the Y and let's do 5 millimeters and see what that does. Okay, and that's good. I like that, especially because it's not so far that it's poking, because remember, when you change it, when you change your size here, it's not just coming out down the bottom. It's it's also putting in information here at the top. So the 5 millimeters also means that it's growing up through here. And you can see that actually by bringing that down. You see that's a much larger piece than it was. So we're going to put that back like there. And that gives you a nice big tab to fit into your model so that it's not going to go anywhere. In fact, let's go ahead and increase this to 15 millimeters. Oop, not 150. 15 millimeters. And see how that looks. Yeah, okay. Nice big chunky tab. I think we like that. So we're going to go ahead and hit accept. And you can see, like I said, this is the dropped part here. We're going to actually make a copy of this. There's the primary hull and the neck. We're going to have this connected to it. And then we're going to create a space inside the secondary hull here that will fit that, will accept that. So let's go ahead and close the icon, the eye for the saucer. And for the dropped part, here's the trick that you have to be aware of. We're going to create a second one, and you can create a second dropped part just by hitting the duplicate button right here. There. See, now we have drop part 1 and we have drop part copy, which is excellent. Let's close the eyeball for drop part 1, and we have drop part copy is right here. So we're going to select our secondary hull. Now we're going to hold down the shift key and select dropped part copy, and we're going to select from our left hand side drop down Boolean difference. Now from Boolean difference, you see what it's done here. It's created a hull, but it's a very messy hull at this moment. We're going to deselect auto reduce result because we do not want this result to be reduced. And then the target edge scale is the part where this is going to get cleaned up right here. I usually keep my target edge scale around 0.44, somewhere between 3.9 and 4.4 is good. Now you see what that did to this hull just as I reduce the target edge scale. I can increase it and you see how ugly it gets. And as you decrease the target edge scale, it gets cleaner and cleaner. And like I said, 0.4, somewhere between 0.39 and 0.4 is very good. If you get farther than that, it takes longer to do the math, for the computer to do the math and to remove the piece. So you just scroll around here a little bit. And if you see your model in these colors here, where the hole is an orangish color, the model itself is a purplish color, you know that you're gonna get a good Boolean difference out of that. If it's not gonna give you a good Boolean difference, it's gonna tell you. It will show up as red. The entire model will show up as red, and then if you hit accept, it's gonna say error. So in this case, we're in good shape. We can hit accept, and just like that, we have our secondary hull with a nice big slot cut in to fit this dropped part right there. And that's going to go up to the primary hull. Now here's the trick that you need to be aware of. This dropped part is the exact same size as this hole right here. That sounds fine and dandy, except it's really not. When you're talking about 3D printing, especially with resin, there's a small amount of wiggle room that you need to leave in the part because there's a certain amount of expansion and contraction. Resin shrinks as it's growing. It's a very, very small amount, but it's significant enough that you cannot have a hole that's exactly 4 inches by 10 inches and expect that your 4-inch by 10-inch part is going to fit in like butter. Sometimes that is the case with FDM printing, but with resin printing, that is just not the case. You can't think of it that way. So I have to take my dropped part, and I'm going to go ahead and work on that now, and hit T for transform. And I'm going to come back over here to uniform scaling. And I'm going to change the scale of it. Instead of 1, it doesn't have to be a whole lot, 0.95. That tiny amount of difference, if you zoom in close on it, you can see it, especially on this axis, on the long axis here. But that's going to be enough. In fact, we might do 0.93 to allow the part to slide in and out without any issues. So that's where we're at right now. Let's go ahead and close the eyeball for the secondary and reopen the saucer. Now we have reduced this already, so now all I have to do, select the saucer, hold down my shift, select my dropped part, and you don't have to hit Boolean Union, just hit combine. Just like that, you now have a saucer that is ready to import into as an STL on its own, and then import into your 3D printing software. So we can close this out because we actually don't need to use anything for the saucer again. Let's keep on trucking and let's come back over here to the secondary hull. And what else do we need to do? Well, we need to make some pins for the pylons here and here. So let's close the secondary hull. Let's go ahead and open both nacelle pylons for now. And let's focus on the port side one to start with here. So I'm selecting it and I'm just getting to a point where I can see the face better. Now this is a very, very small piece, so you have to be aware that when you come over to your Meshmixer, you're going to grab your cube again, you're going to come over here, you're going to hover your cube, and again, like I said, I left clicked, and I'm holding the left click button down as I come over here, and I'm going to place it on this face, and it looks like crap because it defaults to a much larger cube. So let's bring that down to, let's see what a 2mm cube looks like. Hit the tab button. See, even 2mm is really a little bit too big. So let's do 1.5mm. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. You see what I mean though, because we knew that these were going to be pretty small. So I'm holding down my middle wheel button in order to do this right here, so I can just get a better idea of where I want to move this. And now I'm going to left click and put it more or less in the center here. Good. And hit accept. And you'll see how the angle of the pylon does not match the angle of the little dropped part that we just created. So I'm going to click on the dropped part, hit T for transform, grab the arc, and just move it a little bit. And again, this isn't wholly necessary, but I try to put as much symmetry as possible into my model. Okay, excellent. And now I'm going to start stretching this, and again, just like we had done with the first pin, it's not stretching very fast. So I'll disconnect that, and I will just say, all right, well, how about a 3mm? Okay, and I just use the shift tab key to go up like that, and now tab back down. 3mm is a little too small, so let's see what 5mm looks like. Shift tab to come back up. Okay, we're getting closer, but I still think that we should probably do more than that. 7 is definitely too much. Okay, we don't like 7. So 6mm it is. Okay, and obviously that's not nearly enough of a tab to fit into the model, so we are going to stretch that out as well. Now, if you take a second here before we go any farther and you look around at this and you see how we've moved the part and the angles that we can move this are still in relationship to this part itself. In other words, they're related to the local angles. If you look here, you can also select a few of the other items over here. I believe you can hit world on this one, but I'm not sure if I can without uniform scaling. We'll just go back to that in a second. But we want this to be a little bit farther out here. We're going to make that 6mm as well, so that we have a nice big chunky tab that we can slide into. And now what I'm doing is I'm going around and I'm seeing if I need to angle this at all to make it a little bit more even. I want there to be enough space on all the sides of the tab so that when I print it out, it's not gonna make a mess. In other words, this section isn't gonna sort of goo into this section right here when I print it out. I want there to be plenty of space around all of those parts. All right, so that looks good there. Let's do the exact same thing. Uh-oh, nope, it's not good. Look over here. See the mistake that we made? The dropped part is actually coming through on that side. So we're going to fix that. We'll take this, we'll make sure it's selected, hit T for transform. We're going to continue rocking this back a little bit more, like that. And we'll scooch it up a tiny bit as well. Not that far. It's a tough balancing act when you're talking about parts that are so thin. In fact, we may even have to make this 1.4 millimeters. Yeah, there we go. Okay. That's much better. Much more better. All right, so let's do the same thing over here. I'm going to come up like so. I'm going to grab my Meshmix cube, hold it down, come over here, put it in like that, and make it teeny tiny. And we have to hit accept. Now you see that now we have a dropped part 1, which is this, and a dropped part 2, which is this one right here. T for transform. We already know that we want that to be 6 millimeters. And we believe it's the Y that we also want 6 millimeters. Yeah, so it's a nice big part. And you can see that the angle of this pylon does not match the angle of this part, and it's sticking out here like that. So we're just going to rock that back so it looks like it matches a little bit more. Oop. Looks good from that angle. Looks good there. I've got enough space all around it. I'm going to kind of move it back this way just a tiny bit. Okay, I think we're in good shape. We might pull it out just a little bit and hit accept. Now we're going to come back up here to file and hit save because we want to make sure that we're not going to lose the work we're about to do. All right, so far so good. Everything looks to be pretty good. The next thing we're going to do, just like we had done with the saucer and the secondary, is we're going to duplicate both of these parts. We'll duplicate drop part 1, and we're going to duplicate drop part 2. And we're going to close the eyeball on both of those. And we're going to close the eyeball for the nacelles. So now all we have are the duplicates of drop part 1 and 2, the copies. We'll open up the secondary hull. And now we're going to Boolean difference some slots in for those before we reduce the size of the originals and glue them onto the pylons. So here we go with this. We have the secondary hull selected. Hold down the Shift key, select dropped part 1 copy, and go to Boolean difference. Let's zoom in here real quick so we can see what we're doing. Yeah, that looks pretty ugly right now, doesn't it? So remove auto reduce result, slide the target edge scale down to about 39. There you go. That definitely looks a lot cleaner. There's a couple little rough edges here and here. You don't have to worry about these along here. Meshmixer does not render the model in anything remotely near high def. So you see all these ugly, ugly windows. When it exports to STL, they're not going to look nearly that bad. But these black ones here and here, those are going to show up a little bit funky, but they are in a flat face that's going to be covered up by the model. So and we're talking a really, really small bit, so you don't have to worry about that. We'll hit accept. We'll come over to this side, do the same thing, select the secondary hull, then hold down your shift, select drop to part 2 copy, select Boolean difference, auto reduce result off, target edge scale down to about 39. Oh, no. 30, okay, that looks better at 36, that's fine. Hit accept. Nice, okay. You've got your tabs in there for your secondary hull, and they are ready to accept these 2 dropped parts here. But remember, we want to reduce those. We don't want them to be that big. They have to be reduced just a tiny, tiny bit. So make sure that you're back on uniform scaling and do 0.94%. Accept. Same thing. T for transform. Make sure uniform scaling is on. 0.94%. Accept. Okay, now we're going to close the secondary hull again. We'll open up our nacelles again. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to be combining these. I'm going to select the port nacelle and hold down the shift key and click on the dropped part and hit combine. Same thing for starboard nacelle, shift key, select the drop part and combine. All right, we are moving along. We're actually almost done with this particular model. Let's not forget to save. And last but not least, let's close those out. Let's open up our deflector. Now see, this is pink, and it's pink and translucent because I actually have that nacelle selected, but the eyeball is closed. And it'll be the same way. And I could even, if I select this and then hold down my shift key, I can make the USS Pinkerprize cloaked, because all of those eyeballs are closed, even though I've selected it. Yeah, my niece would love that, Pink Enterprise. But we're not worrying about that right now. We're just worrying about this deflector right here. And we want to make a new pin that's going to go way back here on the back of this ridiculously small. That's going to be a lot of fun, right? Because how big is that? That's going to be crazy tiny. Let's find out. Now we're going to select the cylinder and stick the cylinder here. 3.72, and it's already massively larger than it should be. So let's see what it looks like with 1 millimeter. All right, well that's slightly better. Here's where eyeballing can be a bit of a pain on occasion, because we need to try and find the center of this. And I'm sure there's better ways of doing it, and if anybody wants to give me some more Meshmixer tutorials about doing that sort of thing, I am open to it, so you guys let me know. But in the meantime, that looks pretty good there at a 1 millimeter little column, little cylinder. So we'll put you in like that. Yeah, that looks pretty even all the way around. I don't think anybody's going to be noticing if it's a little off. Now we're going to select that tiny little thing, hit T for transform. We want to make it longer, and that's going to be on the y-axis. You see why I do this, because the axes aren't completely intuitive. I would have thought that was the x-axis, and the z-axis seems to be this way, but a lot of times that's actually the x-axis. So we're going to, and that way I can pull it even though I'm not really doing anything. I can see which one is moving, and then I can come over here and do what I want to do, which is move that into a 3. We'll make that even a 5 millimeter. Now, whenever you're doing things like that, again, you remember that whatever you see on this side is going to be duplicated on this side of the center. So that means that 5 millimeters is probably pushing it I bet you that it's really close to some of this detail here. This detail is ridiculously small though, so don't think anybody's going to notice, but just to be on the safe side, let's come out to 4 millimeters so that it's not pushing out too far. And we'll hit accept. That's our pin for the deflector dish. Dropped part 1. We're going to go ahead and duplicate it again. We'll close the eyeball for that and the deflector. So we're only looking at dropped part 1 copy. And we'll open the eyeball for the secondary hull. Now we'll select the secondary hull, hold down our shift key, select the copy of the dropped part, and hit Boolean difference. Now it may look okay just like that, but trust me, it's really not. You still want to auto-reduce the results and take that target edge scale back down to like 39 or so. See, they looks much cleaner, much cleaner that way. We'll hit accept. We've got our hole ready to be used. We'll close that out. And let's go ahead and combine these two parts. But don't forget, you're going to take your dropped part, T for transform, go back to uniform scaling, and make it just a tiny bit smaller so that it will fit inside that hole. And now we're going to take the deflector and our dropped part and combine it. And that's it. We have just created a simple, easy to assemble resin model that's 1 to 1400 scale that has 5 different parts that we can just pin and tab and support in place and glue easily. And now we need to save our file. And now we want to export these parts because it looks fine and dandy in Meshmixer, but we want these parts to go to be exported so that we can print them on our printer. So we'll select the saucer, come up to File, Export. Let's I've already done this here, but I'm just going to go ahead and we'll create a new folder. Tutorial export. And now I understand that you're not seeing this part when I'm doing this. You're only seeing the screen here, and I'm sorry for that. So what I'm doing is I'm creating the file. It's going to ask you what type of file name to save it as. You want to make sure that it's as an STL. You can also do it as an OBJ object format, but I like to use STL personally for working on 3D models for printing them out. So I keep it as STL binary format, and I'm going to name this one. Again, like I said, I know you're not seeing this screen. But we'll name this 1400 Pilot saucer. Save. And we'll do the same thing here. We're going to select our port nacelle, come up to File, Export, and like I said, I know you're not seeing this part. I'm going to keep the file type as STL. File name is going to be 1400 Pilot port nacelle. Starboard nacelle, export 1400 Pilot STRBD nacelle. You would have loved that. I didn't type nacelle, I typed in nacelle. 1 L and 3 E's. That really makes sense. And last but not least, our deflector. Export. Pilot deflector. And congratulations, you now have a model that you have sliced up. You've got your tabs and your pins all ready to go. Everything's going to fit into your secondary hull. All the other parts have got tabs for it. And then when everything's printed, it's just boom, 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 and you have your model built. I hope that helped. Really do hope this tutorial helps a little bit. I'll probably be creating a couple more of these as we go along, but I just figured to get people started with the basics of cutting your model apart, scaling your model, cutting your model up, and pinning it. I thought that this would be a good one to start everybody off with. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.